Good morning, friends. Today, the subject for this week is the principles of nonviolent communication. And those principles we will integrate into our morning meditations and also into our evening relaxations. Nonviolent communication is an understanding that the way that we communicate and the way that we've learned to communicate is rooted in violence, both to ourselves and to others. And that when we uproot that way of communication, we can find another way of communicating, which is rooted in connection, compassion, and, and reverence and dignity for our own lives and the lives of others. This was a system developed by Marshall Rosenberg and is a very beautiful system and technique and based on principles that really have a lot of synergy and alignment and congruence with yogic practices and the practices of meditation. For example, the first step in nonviolent communication is observation. Observation in a descriptive way of what's happening. And in meditation, we also try to develop this quality of observing ourselves without judgment, without analysis, without moving towards or moving away from, holding space and observing what is happening in the most descriptive, neutral way possible. So, for example, we can learn to practice that as it relates to our own bodies and sensations that arise within the body, so that we might not describe, ooh, I've got a pain in my shoulder. We might describe, I'm noticing a constriction around my shoulder. And that's a very different way of relating and speaking to ourselves, to take judgment and judgmental words out and instead to use descriptive words that are void of judgment. So, for example, if there's a feeling of sadness, and sometimes there is a whole emotional package that comes with sadness. We shouldn't be sad, I shouldn't cry, all these kinds of mental thoughts or narratives. Instead of using the word sad, we can describe the feeling. There is a downward quality that I feel within my heart. And it makes me want to curl up into a ball and put the covers over my head. And this way of describing our bodies and our emotions is a very profound way that we can get out of this duality that is very pervasive in our society, where things are good or bad. And instead, we describe them in a way that's neutral and descriptive without that label. And that ability to express observation is a skill that takes a lot of time and practice. And so we will practice. We will practice observing our breath without judging, labeling it. Observing our body without judging or labeling it. Observing our posture without judging or labeling it. So let's practice. Find a comfortable seat, whether it's on your couch in your living room, on a chair, in your office, or if the body is tired, you can always lie down on the back. And when you're comfortable, close your eyes so that you can bring your awareness inward. And observe the breath. Observe the pace and rhythm of your breath without changing it. You may notice in the silence that there is an additional sound in the background, and that is the sound of city trucks working on the street in front of our house. Observe not only the breath, but any sounds that you can pick up around you. And now let's bring our observation into the foundation of our sitting. And that may be the feet, or it may be the sit bones and pelvis. And observe. Observe the feeling and sensation of the ground and support beneath you. Observe next the spine, making an effort to grow long through the crown of the head and grow wide across the collarbones. And observe the muscular effort that's required to grow taller and to lift the sternum bone. Observe the muscles within the face, the muscles across the forehead, the eye muscles, the muscles around your mouth and in the jaw. And notice if you're able to let go of any tension in the facial muscles. Come back to the breath. The inhalation and exhalation of breath. Breath has 4 phases. Inhale, and at the top of the inhale is a pause. Exhale, and at the end of the exhale is a pause. Observe if there is that pausing in your breath, and allow for that pause. Observe and notice the effect of slowing down the breath. Next, bring your attention to your heart space and observe breath at the heart space. Next, visualize your day unfolding in front of you. Visualize the things that you're planning to do and people you're intending to interact with. And we notice our day unfolding without judgment, simply from a place of observation, observing ourselves. And come back to the heart space and to observing breath at the heart space. And observe the whole body, bringing our awareness to the entire body. Noticing if you're able to feel the whole body breathe. Observing without expectation, simply observing. And lastly, bring both palms together at the heart space. And our dedication today is that we may drop this lens of duality, that we may drop from our internal talk, blame and shame, that we may come to a place of understanding and accepting ourselves as we are and accepting others as they are. And gently open the eyes. So observation is the first step in this beautiful system of communication, which takes blame and takes shame out of our language and out of our communication. And it's a very beautiful thing to practice. For example, we come home and we live with a roommate, and the feeling that comes up when we see the house in a certain state is frustration. And the thought that comes up is the house is a mess and my roommate is lazy. And instead, we come home and we observe. We observe that there are dishes on the counter. And we observe inside of us that there's this feeling of being out of control. And then it's a different conversation that we can have. We can ask our roommate, hey, I noticed that the dishes are on the counter and I was hoping you'd have time to do it. And it really makes me feel agitated when I come home and I see the kitchen in that state. And it's a very different conversation than coming home and saying, the house is a mess. How come you're always messy? Very different. This method of communication confers dignity to the other person and helps us to develop the internal skills to really connect with what's going on inside of us. So we will explore this even more in this weekly talk, and we will continue to explore these skills in our evening relaxation and morning meditations throughout this week. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a beautiful day that unfolds ahead of you. From my heart to yours.